Imagine waking up one day and realizing you are strangely comfortable in your discomfort. It's not that you want the pain, not that you enjoy the struggle, but somewhere deep inside it feels familiar, safe even. You've built your life trying to escape suffering, working harder, chasing success, avoiding failure, fixing what's broken, and yet, here it is again waiting for you in the quiet moments. It's in your thoughts before you sleep. It's in the way your heart tenses when nothing is wrong, as if waiting for the next storm. What if I told you that part of you needs this suffering? Not consciously, not logically, but in the hidden corners of your mind, you are addicted to it. Sounds absurd. Who would choose to suffer? But think of it. Why do some people stay in toxic relationships long after they know the damage it causes? Why do others sabotage success the moment they get close to it? Why do we replay old failures in our minds, as if reliving them gives us some strange sense of meaning? There is a cruel paradox at the heart of the human condition. We spend our lives running from pain, while secretly clutching it to our chest. Maybe it's because suffering gives us an identity. Maybe it's because pain feels more certain than joy. After all, happiness can vanish in a heartbeat, but pain lingers. Or maybe it's because suffering gives us a story to tell, a justification for why we are the way we are. Somewhere in your past life hurt you. It taught you that the world is unpredictable, that people leave, that dreams shatter. And instead of fully healing, you learned to live inside that wound. You built your personality around it. You told yourself, this is who I am now. And here is the terrifying part. Once the wound becomes part of your identity, letting go of it feels like death. Because if you are no longer the one who was betrayed, the one who was overlooked, the one who failed, then who are you? We rarely ask this question because the answer feels like it will strip us naked. So we keep the suffering close. We dress it up in different forms: anxiety, anger, self-doubt, endless striving, but at the core it's the same familiar ache. And maybe you don't even notice it anymore. It's the air you breathe, the background hum of your existence. But there is another possibility, one far more unsettling. What if the world we live in feeds this addiction? What if the culture you inhabit, the media you consume, even the values you've been taught, are designed to keep you in a low-grade state of suffering? Not enough to break you completely. Just enough to keep you restless, unsatisfied, hungry for relief you never quite get. What if the endless scrolling, the constant comparisons, the pressure to achieve, the guilt of not doing enough? What if all of it is part of a machinery that thrives on your unease? You would think this is a modern problem, but it's not. Thousands of years ago, the Buddha saw it and called it dukkha, the inherent suffering of life. Nietzsche hinted at it when he said, to live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. Carl Jung went further, warning that what we do not make conscious will control us. And when suffering is unconscious, it doesn't just control us, it defines us. So here you are, not in chains, not locked in a prison, yet still not free. Because the real prison is invisible. It's built from familiar feelings, old narratives, and tiny daily rituals that keep the wound alive. And here's the real danger. Once you become accustomed to this state, joy feels suspicious. Peace feels unnatural. Success feels undeserved. So you unconsciously sabotage them, just to return to the emotional landscape you know best. Which leaves us with a question, maybe the most important question you will ever ask yourself. If you have built a life that still somehow circles back to suffering, if you are both the prisoner and the jailer, then what does freedom even look like? And more importantly, would you truly accept it if it arrived? Because breaking free from suffering isn't just about healing. It's about dismantling an identity you've lived with for years. And that is not a simple task. This is where we must begin, by looking directly at the truth most people spend their lives avoiding. We are not only victims of suffering. We are, in some twisted, hidden way, its willing participants. The question is, why? And once we find the answer, will we be ready to let go? Suffering doesn't just happen to us. It's not merely an unfortunate side effect of living in a chaotic world. The deeper truth, the one we rarely confront, is that our minds are wired in ways that make suffering not only possible but almost inevitable. To understand this, we have to look beneath the surface of our everyday experience, into the ancient machinery of the human psyche. From an evolutionary standpoint, your brain's primary job is not to make you happy, it's to keep you alive. Survival always trumps joy. And survival demands constant vigilance. A scanning of the horizon for threats, a fixation on what might go wrong, a mental archive of past pains to prevent future mistakes. This negativity bias, the tendency to focus more on threats than pleasures, was once a life-saving adaptation. The human who remembered where the tiger appeared last week was more likely to survive than the one distracted by sunsets. But in the modern world, this survival system hasn't evolved as fast as our environment. There are no tigers stalking your neighborhood, yet your mind still roams the savanna of memory and imagination, hunting for danger. That's the first hook in the trap. Your brain mistakes familiar pain for safety. Carl Jung warned us about this when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The unexamined mind doesn't just repeat patterns, it clings to them. Think about your earliest experiences of suffering. Maybe it was a parent who withheld affection, a betrayal from someone you trusted, a humiliation in front of your peers. These moments cut deep. And as a child, you didn't have the tools to fully process them, so your mind built stories around them. People always leave. I'm not good enough. I can't trust anyone. Over time, these stories became part of your identity. You stopped questioning them. They became the truth as far as you knew it. And here's the strange part. Even when life offers evidence to the contrary, your mind often rejects it. Nietzsche once said, "Convictions are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies." If your conviction is that you are destined to suffer, then even joy will be filtered through that belief. You'll see happiness as temporary, success as suspicious, love as fragile. Psychologically, this is called confirmation bias, the tendency to interpret new information in ways that confirm existing beliefs. If you believe the world is cruel, every small disappointment will seem like proof. If you believe you're unworthy, every rejection will feel inevitable. And so the suffering loop tightens. But there's another layer, one that philosophy and psychology converge on. It's the idea that suffering gives meaning to existence. Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the concentration camps, wrote, "In some ways suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. Pain, when framed correctly, can forge strength, deepen empathy, and clarify what matters." This is true. But the shadow side of this truth is dangerous. We may start seeking suffering just to feel meaningful. Think about how society romanticizes the tortured artist, the lonely visionary, the self-sacrificing parent. We glorify stories of hardship as proof of authenticity. And while these narratives can inspire, they also plant a dangerous seed. If I am not suffering, am I truly living deeply? Arthur Schopenhauer took an even darker stance. He believed that life itself was an endless cycle of desire and dissatisfaction, that to exist was to suffer, and the best we could do was to reduce the pain where possible. While his view may sound pessimistic, it contains a hidden insight. If we believe suffering is inevitable, we stop looking for ways out. But here's the twist most people miss. Your suffering might not even be entirely yours. We inherit more than just eye color and bone structure from our ancestors. Epigenetics shows that trauma can be passed down through generations, altering the way genes express themselves. Jung spoke of this as the collective unconscious, the deep reservoir of symbols, fears, and archetypes shared across humanity. Your fear of abandonment, your tendency toward self-sabotage, your pull toward chaos. Some of these may be echoes from lives you've never lived. Add to this the influence of modern culture, a system that thrives on keeping you slightly dissatisfied, and the addiction to suffering becomes almost inevitable. Advertising tells you that you are incomplete without their product. Social media shows you a curated world where you are always lagging behind. Even productivity culture whispers that resting is lazy, that your worth is measured in output. The result? You are never quite there. There's always something to fix, something to chase, something to fear losing. And when you finally achieve what you wanted, the relief is temporary before the cycle begins again. So we arrive at the second hook in the trap. Society is structured in a way that monetizes your discontent. And this is why escaping the addiction to suffering feels so impossible. It's not just you against your own mind. It's you against an ancient survival system, against inherited wounds, against a culture engineered to keep you wanting. But this raises a terrifying question. If suffering has shaped your brain, your beliefs, your identity, and your culture, what is left when you take it away? Would the absence of suffering feel like peace, or like emptiness? Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre believed that human beings are condemned to be free, that once stripped of excuses and external constraints, we face the unbearable weight of choosing who we are. Without suffering to define us, we are forced to confront the void of possibility. And maybe that's the secret we're avoiding. Maybe we cling to suffering not because we enjoy the pain, but because it saves us from a deeper terror, the uncertainty of a life without it. The mind says, better the devil you know. But the soul whispers, there is more than this. And so, the question becomes not only why are we addicted to suffering, but also what would it take to want something else more? To answer that, we must see the true cost of staying in this cycle, the hidden ways it corrodes our lives, even when we believe we've adapted to it. That's where we go next. Suffering has a way of disguising itself. It's not always a scream in the night or a wound you can point to. More often, it seeps into the cracks of everyday life, subtle and quiet, until it becomes the architecture of your existence. You don't notice the bars of the cage anymore, but they are there, shaping every choice you make. When you are addicted to suffering, your decisions stop being about growth, and start being about preservation of the familiar. You don't take that leap into the unknown, because uncertainty feels more dangerous than the pain you already understand. You don't leave the relationship that drains you because at least you know how to navigate its storms. You don't silence the self-criticism in your head because without it, who would you even be? This is the first unseen consequence. Your life begins to orbit the wound. Every plan, every risk, every dream is filtered through the question: will this disturb the emotional ecosystem I've grown used to? And if the answer is yes, you back away. You tell yourself it's not the right time, or too risky, or I'm not ready. But deep down, it's not readiness you lack. It's willingness to let go of the pain that has become your anchor. The second consequence is more insidious. You start sabotaging joy without even realizing it. A healthy relationship enters your life, but you pick fights over trivial things until the warmth cools. You get an opportunity that could change everything, but you procrastinate, overthink, or self-destruct until it slips away. It's not that you want to ruin good things, it's that good things feel unsafe when your nervous system has been trained to expect pain. The third act of rebellion: redefine who you are without your suffering. This might be the scariest step of all. Remember, your suffering has been a central character in your life story. Without it, the narrative feels incomplete. So you have to write a new one. Ask yourself, if I were not the one who was hurt, the one who was abandoned, the one who failed, who would I be? This isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about refusing to let the past be the final word. You can acknowledge your wounds without wearing them as your uniform. Viktor Frankl, who endured unimaginable horrors, found freedom not in erasing pain, but in choosing his response to it. His famous insight: when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves, is the heart of this rebellion. The fourth act of rebellion: learn to tolerate peace. This sounds strange, but for someone addicted to suffering, peace can feel threatening. It's quiet. There's no adrenaline, no drama, no chaos to solve. Feels empty. So the work here is to sit in that quiet without rushing to fill it with noise. Take walks without your phone. Sit in your home with nothing playing in the background. Let yourself feel the unease of calm, and stay there until it begins to feel natural. At first, this will feel unbearable. You'll be tempted to stir up old pain just to feel something. But every time you resist that urge, you are rewiring your brain. You are teaching it that safety can feel good, not boring. The fifth act of rebellion: align your environment with your liberation. You cannot heal in the same environment that sustains your suffering. This might mean distancing yourself from people who thrive on drama. It might mean stepping away from social media accounts that trigger comparison and dissatisfaction. It might mean leaving jobs, communities, or even entire lifestyles that are built on cycles of burnout and scarcity. Nietzsche wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." The tribe, in this case, can be your family, your friends, your workplace, or your culture at large. To rebel is to risk exile, but it is also to claim your freedom. The sixth act of rebellion: replace meaning through suffering with meaning through creation. For many people, suffering feels meaningful because it's the only deep thing they know. But creation, whether it's building a business, raising a child, making art, serving a cause, can give life a meaning just as profound without the constant toll of pain. This doesn't mean your new life will be free of hardship. It means that hardship will no longer be the point of your existence. You'll stop chasing it as proof of depth. You'll find depth in what you build, not just in what you endure. And finally, the seventh act of rebellion: choose every day. This is not a one-time decision. There is no dramatic movie moment where you stand in the rain, scream into the sky, and are instantly free. The addiction to suffering is patient. It will wait for you. It will test you on bad days. It will offer you the comfort of familiarity when peace feels too raw. And every day you will have to choose. Do I return to the cage because it feels safe? Or do I keep walking into the open air even when it stings my eyes? The beauty, and the terror, of freedom is that no one else can walk that path for you. And perhaps this is where the truest rebellion lies, not in defeating suffering once and for all, but in refusing to worship it as your God. You can bow to something else now. You can bow to joy, to love, to possibility. You can let your life be shaped by more than just the echoes of your wounds. But there is one more layer to this, a final truth that changes everything. Because even in rebellion, even in liberation, there's something we have to face. We may never erase suffering completely. And maybe we're not supposed to. The question becomes, if suffering will always be part of life, how do we live so that it no longer owns us? That's where we turn next. Here is the truth we try to avoid. Suffering will never leave you entirely. No matter how disciplined, enlightened, or self-aware you become, there will still be loss, still be heartbreak, still be disappointment. The storms will still come. But freedom was never about eliminating the storms. It's about no longer building your identity around them. The addiction to suffering thrives on one fundamental lie: this pain is who I am. The moment you stop believing that, the moment you see that pain is something that happens to you, not something you are, you've already cracked the lock. This is the shift that changes everything. Not, I must destroy all suffering, because that's impossible. Not, I must love my suffering, because that can become another trap of romanticizing it. But instead, I can let suffering visit without letting it move in. This realization changes the way you see every challenge. A heartbreak isn't proof you're doomed to be alone. It's proof you're alive, capable of love. A failure isn't evidence you're cursed. It's a step in a process that includes risk, learning, and growth. Even grief, the deepest pain of all, is reframed. It hurts because you cared, and caring is not weakness. When you stop identifying with your suffering, you become something terrifying to the systems that profit from your discontent. You become unmanageable. You're no longer as easily sold on the promise that happiness lies in the next purchase, the next promotion, the next escape. You stop feeding the machine that thrives on your dissatisfaction. But here's the paradox within the paradox. To reach this freedom, you must walk straight into the heart of your suffering, not to feed it, but to witness it. To understand its shape, its triggers, its stories. Because only by seeing it clearly can you stop mistaking it for yourself. Think of it like this. A fish doesn't know it's in water until it leaps into the air. You've been swimming in suffering so long you've mistaken it for the very substance of life. The leap, the moment of clarity, comes when you realize there's an ocean and there's a sky. This is not a one-time epiphany. It's a practice. Every time pain arrives, you have a choice. Do I fuse my identity to this? Or do I let it pass through me without becoming my name, my story, my truth? Philosophers have tried to articulate this for centuries. The Stoics called it the dichotomy of control. You cannot control the external world, only your internal response. The Buddhists call it non-attachment. Pain may be inevitable, but clinging to it is optional. Even modern neuroscience supports this. Our brains are plastic, capable of rewiring with repeated practice, meaning our responses to suffering can change over time. But there's another layer, perhaps the most profound of all. When you no longer need suffering to feel alive, you free up enormous energy for something else. Creation. Creation, unlike suffering, is expansive. It doesn't shrink your world, it enlarges it. It's not about avoiding pain, but about giving your life so much meaning and richness that pain loses its throne. Imagine redirecting the same intensity you once poured into nursing wounds into building something you believe in, a work of art, a movement, a family, a business, a community. Imagine no longer needing chaos to feel purpose, because purpose now comes from what you make, not what you endure. And this is where the final transformation happens. You stop asking, how do I stop suffering? You start asking, what will I do with my life, knowing suffering will come, but knowing it will no longer own me? This is the difference between living reactively and living intentionally. When suffering owns you, every decision is a reaction to avoid pain or to cling to familiar wounds. When you own your suffering, when you see it, name it, and refuse to build your identity around it, you can make decisions based on desire, curiosity, love, and vision. It is here that true freedom lives, not in a perfect, pain-free life, but in a life where pain no longer dictates your worth or your path. And perhaps this is the final, most powerful realization of all. You do not need to destroy your suffering to be free. You need only to stop worshiping it. Because once you stop kneeling before it, suffering loses its crown. It becomes what it always was, a visitor, not a ruler. A chapter, not the whole story. When that happens, the world opens in ways you couldn't have imagined. The colors are sharper. The air feels lighter. Not because pain has vanished, but because joy is no longer eclipsed by it. You stop bracing for the next blow and start living for the next moment worth remembering. And then one day, without fanfare, without even realizing it at first, you'll notice something extraordinary. Peace no longer feels like emptiness. Feels like home. That is when you will know the addiction is broken.